It's time to take a new approach to finding true fulfillment in your career, health, and state of mind through insightful conversations with those who have found their professional and personal passions while achieving balance. Whether it's entrepreneurs, athletes, or healthcare professionals, we bring you real people, real growth right here on the Boost Podcast. Now, here's your host, Elena Lipson.
Hey Boost Squad, and welcome to episode 34. Elena Lipson here, and I can't wait to introduce today's featured guest, Jim Klopman. Jim, are you ready to join the Boost Squad?
Hell yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
So before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Mosaic Growth Partners. Mosaic Growth Partners provides growth strategy consulting to entrepreneurs and organizations in the healthcare and older adult baby boomer market. They can help you bring a new product or service to market, identify and engage new customers and partners, or grow your market share. They also provide coaching and training. For more information, go to mosaicgrowth.com. That's mosaicgrowth.com. Now back to today's featured guest.
So Jim is a lifelong innovator who has always been one of those people who thinks differently. He was born with brain damage, ADHD, and dyslexia, and used athletics to overcome these challenges. After years of being an athlete and unsure of his purpose in life, Jim found his purpose and developed his own business called the SlackBow Balance Training System. After 5 years of development, Jim believes that with the right neural whole body training to optimize the human balance system, everyone can improve physically and mentally and can even live longer and feel younger. Prior to starting SlackBow, Jim worked as a VP of marketing at Intera Corporation and at Russell Athletic as a management turnaround specialist and product developer. So, Jim, I am so excited to have you on the show here today. I actually recently sprained my ankle pretty badly, so I have been doing a lot with balance, and I can't wait to learn more from you about balance training and what SlackBow is all about. So, why don't we just start with that? Can you tell us 3 things that we should know about SlackBow Balance Training System?
Well, number one is that balance in general is something, it's a hidden loss that we don't know about, and people are injuring themselves like you. You may think it's just an accident, but oftentimes it's because there's a degradation in your balance system that you don't really recognize or acknowledge because of the world we live in. 2, balance is what separates us from all the other mammals. We're the only animal that really stands on 2 feet and operates on 2 feet. Apes and chimps can do it. Of course, dogs can stand on their hind legs. But nobody's really designed to stand on 2 feet. And when you watch a human move, most of their movement is on 1 foot. So you're moving from 1 foot to the other. Very seldom are you on 2 feet with weight evenly balanced between the two. And third is, it's a major problem, I think, that we don't recognize, like I said in item 1, in that you see the deaths from and injuries from falls are actually going up. They're not going down where they should be going down. And people don't realize all the damage that falls are doing to us as a whole. And I think it's, upwards of $100 billion a year expense that we don't really see. And it's something that I think everybody should pay more attention to. And it only happens to those of us who live in this modern digital world. It doesn't happen to those who live in countries that don't have all the modern conveniences that we do.
Yeah, I think your point about falls is interesting. A lot of times someone who's maybe older will fall, and that will really be the beginning of the decline of their health. And so figuring out
Absolutely.
Balance is so key. You also mentioned that that balance is really like a hidden loss that we don't know that much about. So at what point in someone's life does their balance start to deteriorate? And how did you kind of figure this out?
Well, how do you figure it out? I don't know how I figured it out. I wish I could tell you how my brain works, but I still don't understand that. But what we see is I created this index called, for lack of a better name, someone else named it, not me, and it sounded good as an acronym, but it's the KBI, or the Klopman Balance Index. Now, there's other balance measurement tools out there, but ours is a little different in that we go way up high in the athletic balance area. So our index is 0 to 100, 50 being average, 90 being, really great professional athlete, and level 20 being somebody that needs a cane or a walker. Well, the world we live in, you live in a metropolitan area. The world we live in is basically designed to prevent falls. It's for that person that has a cane or a walker. So you're operating in a world that has no balance challenge at all. The floors are perfectly flat. If you walk down the sidewalk in any city, and I live in an extremely athletic town, and if there's a crack in the sidewalk that raises up a quarter of an inch, there's a crew of people out there with a very expensive diamond cutter cutting down that crack so it's perfectly smooth. So we build this trip-free environment. And it's just like if you were to go try to build strength in the gym, and you were to lift 5 pounds every day, well, you're not going to get stronger. You have to kind of keep lifting 5, 10, 20, 50, and then you're stronger. Well, if you're operating in a world that has zero balance requirements, your balance system gets degraded. And then one day, so you get degraded, let's say down to a level 30. And then one day you're walking along and you have like a level 50 challenge. You hit that crack in the sidewalk. And if you don't have the balance to sort of catch yourself or balance to catch yourself and prevent a bad fall, you'll get injured. And we just don't know we're losing our balance. And we have these types of things that degrade our balance all over us. We have the flat floors, the vertical walls that degrade our balance because we don't use them. We look at screens, and it's not looking at the screens themselves. It's the square shape of the screens, which is not something you find anywhere in nature. Nothing in nature is square or perfectly rectilinear. Everything's fractal. It's a very unusual set of shapes. Think of a tree or a bush or something like that. So we're denying what we call, for us, the peripheral balance system, the peripheral vision. The third component is we're walking around in shoes that completely devoid our shoes of any sensation from the ground and also inhibit the use of our toes and all the muscles in the bottom of our feet from helping us balance. So as time goes on, you're degrading that system. And then thirdly, for a lot of people, when they wear glasses, in particular progressives or bifocals, they start to lose the ability to use that lower part of their vision to help them balance and move. So we have these 4 components that just are driving our balance system down, down, down. And again, because we live in this world that's not a balance challenge, we don't know we're losing it. And I think it's a huge component of why the worst part about these deaths for people over the age of 65, deaths and falls are the number one cause of accidental death and accidental injury. So that's bad enough, right? Well, that number's nearly doubled in the last 15 years. Every other medical condition is getting better in terms of the number of deaths that are happening from cancer and heart disease, et cetera. But from falls, it's nearly doubling. It's the number one cause of concussions. It's not athletic play on the playing field. It's not the number one cause of concussions. Falls are. So it's just a bigger and bigger problem, but we don't see it and we don't feel it and we don't address it. And secondarily, I think a big problem is the National Institute of Health classifies falls as accidents. I think it's a disease. It's a loss of balance disease.
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about really rings home for me, having just recently sprained my ankle pretty badly a couple weeks ago. And now I realize how much I've taken balance for granted. I was never a particularly graceful person to begin with. I'm sort of clumsy, but I've had so much trouble balancing. And, I sprained my ankle about 6 weeks ago and thought I was better. I went on a boat this past weekend and my ankle has been hurting ever since because you don't have that balance when you're on the boat. You're constantly balancing the whole time. And it really took a toll on my ankle. So, I see exactly what you're talking about, that the world we live in for the most part designed to make us not really have to work for our balance. And I also wonder, do you think our sedentary lifestyle is contributing to the rise in these falls, that people are just sitting so much that they're not having to, work on their balance?
I think that's obvious. I mean, that's part of all of our problems, that we sit too much. I agree. But on the other hand, I've been using a stand-up desk for, 15 years. And stand-up desks now are supposed to be the cure for all of this. Well, if I'm standing at my desk now, I'm standing on 2 feet. As soon as I touch my desk, my knees lock out, my legs lock out, and I'm doing what I call 3-pointing, and I no longer am balancing. So I'm not using the system anymore. It's like when you're standing around, that's like one thing. But if you lean against a wall, that's kind of a way of resting, right? That's more comfortable and easier on your body when you lean against something. Well, the reason you lean against something is so you don't have to use your balance system anymore. It doesn't take as much energy. Just standing takes energy. So anything you do to move is good, but anything you do to move on an uneven surface or out in nature is even better still.
So do you have like 1 or 2 tips you can give us from your system that we could just do at home every day to improve our balance?
And please, when I give these tips, I have spoke to somebody recently and said, "Oh, I love your tips, and I do it in the bathroom every morning." That's the worst place to do it. It's just hard surfaces all around. And I think deaths from falls in the bathroom is like a huge number. So, but number one is you try to balance on one foot, but you don't balance on one foot with the off the ground foot kicked in front of you. It should be behind you, like you're in mid stride, so to speak, whether you're running or walking. Just by doing that and holding your head up and having a broad vision is really a powerful thing to do in terms of resetting your mind, activating the right-hand side of your mind if you're left-handed, your subconscious part of your brain. That's incredibly important. And then secondly, nobody ever said, oh, hey, we need to spend more time in the office. Everybody says, we need to get out of the office more. We need to, get away from the office. Well, when you get away from the office, you go out into nature, you do things that challenge your balance. A boat ride is a great thing. And you found out how much you challenged your balance on the boat ride because your ankle was sore because it was working so hard. So you had an injured ankle that was being overworked just because you were standing on the boat. But we do all these things like ride boats, motorcycles, ski, bike, play tennis, play golf. We do all these things, go to amusement parks to challenge our balance. And it makes us feel good and it clears the brain. And there's really great research. It says taking a walk in nature, which is a balance challenge, is almost like taking an antidepressant, where taking a walk in a cityscape where you're looking at all these rectilinear surfaces and you're on a flat sidewalk doesn't give you the same benefit. So anything you can do to challenge your balance is good for you. And it makes your brain work better. And I think it, of course, makes your body work better as well.
Great tips. So what's the difference sort of between your system and someone that maybe just goes on the internet and Googles a bunch of balancing exercises?
That's a secret. No, I can tell you, the big difference is is we're always looking for a athletic position. People have been messing with balance for years. Don't get me wrong, but you'll see my class. My favorite is this. You'll see people balance training with their eyes closed. Well, all you're doing is teaching yourself to be a well-balanced blind person. The eyes are really a huge component of your balance system. And I call it the balance system. People go, oh, yeah, the balance system, the proprioceptive system. Oh, yeah, the balance system, the vestibular system. No, it's not one or the other. It's all of the above. It's amazing how complex and rich this system is and how neurally active it is. When you're just standing, if I'm just standing here at my desk, I'm told, and I haven't been able to really find a lot of research on this, but several people will say you're using up to 700 muscles just to stand. So you're active even when you're standing still. And to me, I don't know, it's a huge part of what we do and it's a huge part of our life, but it involves your hands. We see people move their hands a certain way when they balance. We see people hold their tongue in a certain position. But what I find is that when you balance train, you really have to engage your whole body. You just can't try to hold still. It's never holding still. Everything's moving all at once.
Yep. So when you talked a little bit about how deaths from falls are going up. And so when you look at balance and the role that it plays in our mental and physical health as we age, what do you sort of see now that falls are going up? And then what do you see in the future?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's part of my mission is to get the world to wake up. Federal government knows it's a big problem. The federal government believes, the NIH believes that falls alone are a $30 billion a year medical expense. An interesting fact is if you're over the age of 45 and you find a cause to go to the emergency room, there's a 50% chance you're there for falls. So falls are just a huge, use up a lot of time in the emergency room, and we shouldn't be having that many falls. So the federal government knows it's a problem. I said it's the number one cause of concussions. Concussions supposedly are anywhere from the $30 to $60 billion a year medical cost in this country. So the federal government has a $30 million study that they've started. And one of the major studies that they're doing is taking people age 75 who have bad balance and helping them to find ways to recover that balance. And I think that's a worthy thing to do, but you need to be working on it sooner than that. It's like you can't quit smoking once you have cancer, so to speak. You need to quit smoking earlier. And people need to start working on balance earlier. And I think that will help reduce the number of falls that we're having. A crazy thing is that the number one cause of falls for people over the age of 65 is a curb. And so they see curbs all the time. It's not like a curb is some tricky thing that they're negotiating, but that is a huge cause of falls for people over the age of 65. So I think that there's a lot of easy fixes, but because it's hidden and 99% of the people you speak to, before you sprained your ankle, could have asked you, how good is your balance? You go, well, it's okay. Well, maybe not, because, you injured your ankle. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's just, It's a hard thing. And we're working on trying to develop tools where people can go, oh, my balance is good and my balance is bad. And there are other players in the space now, which I'm happy to see. There's a lot of people addressing the older people in terms of trying to recover their balance. I saw an infomercial the other day on a product. I forget the name of it, but I thought it was pretty cool. And it was a simple little thing you could buy, a DVD set, where elderly people could watch this and start to do little tiny things to improve their balance.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I actually knew I didn't have great balance before because I do yoga, and I know my balance isn't that great. But in my defense, this sprain was not my fault. My dog kind of pulled me off a ledge, so this one wasn't due to balance. But I hear totally what you're saying, and now that I kind of am more aware of my own balance challenges,
right.
I realize it's like a lifelong thing that I have to keep doing these exercises, or I'm going to be more prone to having something like this happen again.
Right.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to hear from you about 3 tactics for how you've grown your business, because you went from working in corporate America for other people to then starting this venture. So tell us a little bit about how you were able to grow the business and get it off the ground.
Well, I mean, listen, rule number 1, and God, I love reading about Elon Musk, but, rule number 1 is you have to have an absolute belief in what you're doing, and that gives you the perseverance to keep moving forward. I've been involved in other businesses where I had a vision that was maybe years ahead of anybody else's, and I gave up early. And it was a mistake on my part because I just felt like I must be stupid. The rest of the world doesn't get what I'm doing. And I exited that business, and next thing you know, it becomes, a multi-billion-dollar business. Not next thing, shortly thereafter. So it's really perseverance if you have a belief. And when you watch somebody like Elon Musk, the first Tesla was just a total piece of crap and blew up. He kept going. I mean, he just kept going. I mean, this is a guy who made $1 billion and burned up billions of dollars, and even had to sell his house and rent a house as he was pushing forward with SpaceX and Tesla. So you just have to have that belief that you're going to keep going forward and make it succeed. Hanging in there is really important. And 2, I was all for failure when I was in corporate America. I would tell people who work for me that if you're not screwing up and making mistakes, you're not doing things. And that's true with being an entrepreneur. The difference is that when I screw up, I'm working with limited funds, and then you start to really panic about, oh God, I just burned through all that money, going down that path the wrong way. And it's really hard nowadays when you get on the internet, Facebook, any of these social media places, and there's 1 million people telling you how easy it is to get, 10,000 names on your mailing list, and 1 million people, saying, pay me $100 and I'll show you how to do this and I'll show you how to do that. Or look what I did, which I think is kind of funny, because if I'm making millions of dollars in my business, I'm not going to go on the Facebook and so I'll show you how I made $1 million in my business. So generally the people pushing this, I don't think really know what they're talking about. So it's really hard to stick with what you believe because of all these other inputs. And I've been doing this for 5 years. We are only people like us in our space. Our results are phenomenal. They're unbelievable to most people, but then when they get involved with us, they see it and understand it. And it's difficult to speak to a major player in your industry and they look at you and go, well, we balance, right? We've got this, no problem. You're like, okay, fine. And then they'll go off and, show another way to bench press 400 pounds over your chest, which really has no value for anything. So it's tough. You just got to hang in there and fight for it.
Yeah, everything you're saying completely resonates with me. Your first point about believing in what you do, that sounds obvious, but it's so easy to let all these other voices get in your head when you're a little bit unsure about things too, because you've never done it before. And so I think as an entrepreneur, that's just a constant battle and figuring out how to keep your self-confidence going and keep moving forward. And don't also let those failures really set you back, and just, take what you can to learn from it and then pick yourself up and move right on forward. That is scary though, when, failure is associated with losing money and, you only have a limited runway of funds. So I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but have you had that happen where one of your failures has, caused you to stagnate or lose progress a little bit? And then how did you get yourself back on track knowing that you only had limited funds?
Yeah, I mean, it happened recently. I was just like, this is a crazy thing, and I don't know what this is and what it means, and if it's God's way of operating. But you know, it's true. I mean, it's some people say it's darkest just before the dawn. Some people say it's darkest just before it goes completely black. But it's to me, when you get to that edge, something else shows up, and that's the hardest thing. It's like you're always walking out to the edge of the cliff, and you're like, oh my God, if I take one more step, I'm dead. And the next thing you know, you're at the edge of the cliff and something comes along to pull you back from the edge. And so there's this constant walking to the edge, and you're just like, I can't take this anymore. I can't, you can't keep a gun in your bedside table because you blow your brains out. You got to, hide all the guns, so to speak. And then you get to the edge, and then something good happens. And then you get to the edge and something good happens. So it's that, it helps to have, I don't have the team I should have. I'm trying to build a team. I think it's really important to build a support team around you. I have, a couple of daughters that really stand behind me and believe in me, but they're your kids. What are they, what do they know? But now I'm starting to get more people that are involved with the business who believe in what I'm doing and want to help. Of course, one of the problems with innovators is that, I saw this working 7 years ago. And I was shocked the first 2 years. I was talking to people trying to raise money, pull things together. The people didn't get it. And you have to live with the fact that if it's truly innovative, it takes a while for the world to absorb it. And people absorbing new technology is an emotional decision. It's never a technological decision. We always see it as a technological decision. I know 1 and 1 equals 2 in terms of what I'm doing, but other people don't care. That, when I was in another business, I would explain all the technical stuff about what we were doing. And it was mind-blowing to me how effective it was in terms of the technical demonstration and the proof. But the reality was, this was in the textile industry. The better way to have sold it would have been to say, hey, this stuff works. Joey Cool Guy over there wears it too. And that's the emotional side of it. And so it's just interesting that when you're on that edge, you just got to keep pulling back from it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're alluding to is that timing is really everything. And sometimes, right, when you are kind of ahead of the curve, you're just too early for the rest of the market and your customers. Right. And that can be so frustrating. And but as hokey as it sounds, sometimes like everything does happen for a reason. I've had that too in my business where, I know the market, I know where my clients are struggling, and I try to develop things to help them, and then nobody wants it. And I'm like beating my head against the wall, like, why isn't anyone wanting this? And then I just have to accept now's not the time. I'm probably like, not totally messaging this in the right way to get to them, but, it just means that something else is going to come along and I can revisit this later. And that's really hard to accept and to wrap your mind around. But I think most people go through that at some point in their business.
Well, Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, said all truths pass through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, it's accepted as being self-evident. And so, you go through that phase of people just like against what you're doing, and they think it's stupid, it doesn't work. Then suddenly one day, you're talking to somebody about it and they go, oh, yeah, of course that's true. You see somebody suddenly taking your stuff and running with it online. And that's what happens oftentimes to people who have new and innovative ideas, developers. And they'll tell you, idea developers oftentimes are lying face down in the mud with footprints and knives in their back. And, you just have to hang in there long enough to be the one that you're associated with it instead of giving up on it. Schopenhauer also says talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target that no one else can see. And that's, part of what you're working with here is to be able to hang in there long enough for the world to catch up for what you see.
Yeah, and so much of it is execution too. So like someone, the genius might come up with a great idea, but just can't seem to execute on it. And then there's someone that's very operational and they take that idea and run with it. Like, I mean, even if you look at like Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, that's a lot of what happened there. So that happens to people as well.
Oh yeah. A relative of mine invented part of the telephone, and this is part of patent law history. There was an academic who had a working telephone in the United States for a year, and he decided after, it's like, all right, I got this thing, but who wants to talk to each other over wires like this. So he has a working device for a year. In those days, you walked your patents into the patent office. He said, well, I'm going to go ahead and patent. He walked his patent into the patent office 6 hours after Alexander Graham Bell walked his patent in.
Oh.
And so it's that same sort of thing. You got to take action on your ideas. You just can't sit around and go, hey, this is a good idea. And there's a million people out there right now going, I had that same idea. Well, you didn't act on it. I did. So that's just the way it is.
Right. So, how do you take care of yourself while you're building this business? It sounds like you have the same entrepreneurial challenges that keep all of us awake at night. So what do you do to kind of sleep well and take care of yourself?
Well, I don't sleep great. So, but I never have. I deal with this, with the brain damage. So it's, when they look at a brain scan, it says you have somebody who's got a brain of an NFL football player and post-traumatic stress. And I think I carry a certain degree of that post-traumatic stress, and I have an overactive brain, although I can operate successful in society. So I'm not that kind of post-traumatic stress. For me, I think doing something physical every day, it doesn't have to be, aggressively physical, but moving outside, being in some sort of space outside is really important. I think relationships are a huge component of everything we do. And then thirdly, for me, I eat pretty well, and I have for years. I've been on a high protein diet for 20 some years. That seems to work really well for me. I'm remarkably fit for somebody my age and who does really as little as I do. I don't go to the gym and lift weights. I balance train. I hike, I'll mountain bike occasionally, and then I ski in the wintertime, but really not much. It's not the type of thing that I go grind it out in the gym every day for an hour or two, but I do get outside and do something every day. So those three things are just really important to me: movement, good relationships, and eating the right kind of food.
Yep, that makes sense. So you've given us a lot of insights today and a lot of tips that we can use to improve our own balance, but let's go ahead and close with a parting piece of guidance for all of us.
Well, I mean, the important thing is be aware of your balance system. I think it's something we lose sight of. And every client of ours and most people that read the book will come out of it saying, wow, I get it. And they have a whole new focus on balance, and they move through their life every day being aware of it. Just like you, when you injured your ankle, now you're aware of it, and you're aware how important it is and how much it can help you in terms of improving your life.
Absolutely. So be aware of your balance system. Try to avoid some of the accidents that we've been hearing about today, and it will also help you live longer and feel better. So I hope today's episode inspires you to think more about how you can find your passion and live your best life. For more information, including links to resources that Jim and I chatted about today and how best to get in touch with him, head on over to our website, theboostpodcast.com, and check out our show notes from this episode and catch the Boost bonus. Jim, I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us today. And remember, anything is possible for you.
Now that you've completed this episode, the next step is to join the Boost Squad for strategic insights, tips, and tricks, as well as exclusive resources designed specifically to accelerate your personal and professional growth. All this and more is waiting for you at mosaicgrowth.com.